Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. On today's podcast, we are going to be talking about frequent discipline and how that actually leads to positive outcomes in your relationship.
But of course, before we get to that, if you're enjoying this content, would you hit the like button? It helps us know. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, because every time you hit the subscribe button, it makes me smile.
And if you want to help support the podcast, help us continue to do what we do here, the best place to do that is over on Patreon. So a link to our Patreon is down below.
So this is one that, I hate to say that I haven't also been the most consistent in this department.
And I think that that's really what this comes down to, is being consistent, because I don't want to get too far into the topic before properly introducing it, but really consistency is kind of the key here, because I would never suggest that you look for reasons to discipline and get so nitpicky that you're not allowing your taken in hand to experience any type of success in the name of disciplining often. But you really do want to be consistent and catch all the little things. And that's really what this comes down to, is building consistency and just building a system of predictability for the taken in hand.
Now, this word consistency sometimes comes with this negative connotation, because consistency is hard in every aspect of our life. And so the first thing that I want to do is to let you all know that if you're struggling in the area of consistency, that's okay. And in fact, we struggle in this area sometimes a lot. And so really the difference is just to keep on keeping on, as they say, versus throwing in the towel, if you will. And so, and just remember, consistency can actually be a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing.
I would say that consistency is probably the number one struggle that I've seen couples go through. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to figure out what your rules are going to be, what your routines are going to be, all the things that you're going to establish in your relationship. You have to figure all that out, and then you have to kind of go through the process of figuring out what does effective discipline look like to you. And those can all feel really hard, but implementing your systems, implementing your routines, holding your standards consistently, that is probably the number one struggle that I see couples go through.
Absolutely. And, again, even in our infancy of this, that's where we really struggled. That's where we had a lot of discussions about how to make things better, and we were working on tweaking. It was all about getting the consistency to be a little bit more fluid. I would say, if you're struggling with consistency, the first thing is to think about, are there barriers, are there things that are getting in our way that are preventing us from doing that? Because the way to be more consistent is to remove those barriers and to try to make it be more of something that's instinctive rather than something that you have to think about a lot.
Almost like an automatic response.
Yeah, exactly.
When you have any type of need, you look for ways to meet that need. And this is no different. It's different from the standpoint that it's easier to neglect these needs. But if you do, you're going to see struggle. You're going to not see your relationship thrive, especially in the areas of building that trust and the respect that you really do desire from having a domestic discipline relationship. I know that for me, I do have a strong desire to respect Coda and to trust him. I want to give him all of myself in that way, but it's really hard if the consistency isn't there. And so that is why this part really does come down to being consistent, showing up, doing what you say you're going to do. And also, that's a point of integrity too. Mm. As a head of household, if you say that you're going to establish rules and that there are going to be consequences attached, if you don't actually hold up your end of the bargain, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you're not consistent in that way, it lacks integrity.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that is something that really, as a head of household for the longest time, I did not necessarily see that as a question of my integrity. But then the more that you think about it, the more that you think about, wait, we've set certain things, certain rules, certain pillars and different things up, and I'm going back on those, and I'm going back on those quite a bit. You're absolutely right. It is a question of integrity, and also it can be a question of your commitment. Mm-hmm. Are you really committed to this the way that you said that you were going to. I mean, yes, that old saying of talk is cheap, right? What have you done? What do your actions show? And this is something I had to look myself in the mirror several times and say, you've said a lot of things, you've agreed to a lot of things, but have you really followed through? Are you honoring the integrity? Are you honoring the commitment? And so maybe some of the things that your problems you're having with consistency really do come down to those two things. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. I think that's a really important point.
And I think that really at the end of the day, having frequent discipline is really trust building because it allows me to trust that you are going to uphold the standards that you've set, that you take the rules seriously that you've put into place, and that I can trust that you are going to show up, that you're going to follow through, and that you really do have my best interest in mind. Because when you set up these rules, they're not arbitrary. You have reasons. You want what's best for me, and you do that with purpose. And so when you don't uphold those things, it makes me feel like I can't trust you, not only because you are not following through with what you said you were going to do, but also if you really have my best interest in mind, and you had my best interest in mind when you were setting up the rules, then why is a lack of accountability also what's best for me? Those things can't coexist. And so because there is a contradiction there, it's harder for me to trust that you really are thinking through what is best for me.
You brought up the word purpose, and I think that's something that as head of households, in order to be more consistent, in order to follow through with integrity, all the different things that we are talking about, you have to remember your sense of purpose. What is your purpose in the relationship? Your purpose is to not only hold your taken in hand accountable, but you're leading, you're trying to, the whole point of being in this relationship, the whole purpose again of starting it was to try to take your relationship to a level that it had never been before, because for some reason it had stagnated. For some reason it had problems in it, and you were trying to lessen those. And so that's a really good thing that you just brought up, because if you're having a hard time, and there are times as a head of household that I have trouble, again, following through and being more consistent, these are things to remember, and especially say, okay, the why is the question that will help you answer what the purpose is. Why did we start this in the first place? Why did I want to partake in this? But ultimately, ask yourself the question, why is it important for me to follow through with this? And if you can ask yourself the why questions and answer those, I think that will then be a good snowball effect that then will help you be more consistent in that way.
You might be thinking to yourself right now that, consistency is great, and you may be thinking that you even have really good consistency in your relationship, and there are definitely couples out there that really do thrive in the area of establishing consistency. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, what if she doesn't actually earn discipline all that frequently? Is it really a show of lack of consistency if you're not delving out spankings? And I would say no. You definitely want to evaluate, is the lack of discipline because it's not being earned? And if that is the case, if she's not actually earning the discipline, do you need to establish things like preemptive spanking, like maintenance spanking, just to establish your roles and to drive growth in your relationship? Just because discipline is not being earned doesn't mean that you are thriving and growing. And so you really do want to kind of take evaluation of that. Are we really growing in the direction that we want to go? Are we thriving as a couple? Is our dynamic really where we want it to be? And if the answer is no, then you need to look at first, are the rules where they need to be? Am I actually holding a high enough standard? If you feel like you're holding a high enough standard and she's still not earning discipline because she is meeting that standard, but you still feel like your relationship aspect of your dynamic is kind of stagnating, you may want to look into things like maintenance or, preemptive spankings or planned spankings, just to kind of establish and drive that growth.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that can really help is, we've talked on past podcasts about putting systems into place. One of the things that can really help you with consistency, and that we are reevaluating all the time, not just in our dynamic or our relationship, but individually, is I am constantly thinking, is there better ways that I can set up my life to where it really feeds into our dynamic better, to where I can follow through a lot better as the head of household? Are there tools that I can use or find that can help me better in follow through in our dynamic? And so these are some of the things that will help you be more consistent. These are some of the things that will help you to where because at times I know, and we've talked about this before, if you feel tired, if you feel fatigued, if you have all these things, that you need to look at not only your systems, but look at yourself and some of the things that you are doing that again, answering the why question of why is it that I'm not being consistent? What is it that maybe I'm doing or not doing that's causing me for this lack of consistency?
When Coda takes that self-evaluation of himself and he starts to make shifts, first of all, that is how a head of household is held accountable, is that they take a self-evaluation. I think that oftentimes it is asked, what happens to the head of household if he's not doing what he's supposed to do? That's on him. It's not my job to evaluate what he's doing and hold any type of accountability because I don't have authority over him. So that is just not my place at all. So I don't worry about that part, but it is Coda's job to take that self-evaluation. And when he does, and when I can see that process happening, because I do, I see how he changes, I see how he shifts, I see how he shows up in our relationship. That really creates an environment for me to gain a high level of respect for him.
And that's exactly what you're looking for, head of households, is we're talking a lot about building trust, building respect. Your consistency or lack thereof, and believe me, there's been a lot of times in our relationship where it's been the lack thereof for me, is either going to feed those things or it's going to retract from those things. And so that's why, as Ari was saying, I'm always reevaluating. I'm always taking a look at how I can do things better, to be more consistent, to follow through with those things. And that's why it's so important to ask yourself the why questions, and being willing to trying something and maybe fail. That's okay. But again, being upfront and honest with your taking in hand with those things too. There's a lot of things that I've come to Aria with before that I'm like, I'm going to try this. This may not work, but I just want to try it and see if it does work. And there's been, I think, maybe a lot more things that have succeeded than have failed in that area.
There have been. And when Coda comes to me and was like, hey, we're going to try this, it's never to ask my opinion or permission. It's basically just to let me know that I'm making some adjustments here. They may or may not be permanent. And that sets up the expectation for me to kind of go along and come under his authority in a more supportive way. And that's what he really needs from me. And that's why he communicates that to me. I still have a duty to obey Coda, even when I don't agree, even when he's not doing what he's supposed to do. I still have a duty to obey him. I still have a duty to respect him. But when he does this self-evaluation, when he tries new things, it just creates a natural response from me to give him the respect that he is owed, to give him my obedience, again, that he is owed. And so it's not that he has to earn those things from me, but it's just setting me up to have that be my natural response, and makes it less effort from me to give him what he is owed in our relationship. Because again, even if he wasn't doing those things, he still owed them. But it would take a whole lot more effort from me to give him what he deserves in those situations. So when he does these self-evaluations, I respect him. I trust him to then evaluate me, because I can see that he's evaluating himself. I can see that he's making changes for himself for the better. So then I can trust him to evaluate me, to make changes for me, require things of me, because I know that that's coming from the same place of wanting not only me to be better, but our relationship to be better. And so it just creates a really positive experience.
One of the things that you just brought up is really, really important, and we've said this on past podcasts, but I also want to reiterate it. Head of households, one thing that can help you, in fact, be more consistent is something that Aria just said, which is she realizes that everything that I am holding her to, I already hold myself to. And that's what you need to remember, is the standards that you set for her, you need to have the standards even higher for yourself. You need to hold yourself to the highest standards possible, because that as she just said, will help with her submission, because she looks and says, oh no, he's not dumbing it down for himself. He's not holding himself to a lower standard. He's holding himself to even the same standard or a higher standard than he does me. And so that already puts her in a mindset of, I can submit, I can follow through with those things, because I see how much he is putting into trying to get better and trying to hold consistency in not just our relationship, but in everything else that he's doing. And so that's very, very important that you model and that you show that you are holding yourself to a very, very high standard.
It really just comes down to setting the tone in the relationship.
That's right.
Again, there are certain things that the head of household is owed just because of the position that they hold. But again, when you just set that as a standard for yourself and you're taken in hand and you hold yourself to that standard, it does just make it to where it's a lot easier and it flows a lot more naturally. And you are setting the tone and setting the example through your own behavior and through how you approach your role to basically say, this is the standard for our relationship. And when you hold accountability to your taken in hand, you can do so with the knowledge that you are setting her up for the most success possible. So when she doesn't meet that standard, there really is no excuse, right? And I think it makes it easier to hold accountability when you know that you have given me all the tools to succeed. You've set the environment up for my success. You've given me direction. You've given me everything that I need to succeed. So when I don't, you're like, well, I gave her everything. I gave her all the tools that she needs, and she still didn't meet the standard. So now the only natural outcome is the consequences that we have established. And I think it makes it easier for you to have that mindset because in the past, you have felt, and we've had these conversations, so I know this, but you have felt that sometimes it's unfair to hold me accountable when you have failed in your leadership in your position as a head of household.
Absolutely. There definitely has been many, many times, especially early on, where I wasn't consistent enough holding her to the rules because, I felt like I was not holding myself to a high enough standard, or I had failed in that same way. And so it is definitely now that, you're right. I have to really try to hold myself to those higher standards, so that feeds into what we're doing.
Now, that doesn't mean that if you do fail in your leadership or you fail in your consistency that you don't hold the standard.
Correct.
Because I still have a duty to fulfill my role. I still have a duty to submit and obey and respect you. So when I fail at those things, it doesn't matter that my failure is a result of maybe a lack of leadership, because I'm still held accountable for my behavior. I still have a duty to fulfill my role. And so it's important to note that just because the head of household might not be fulfilling their role perfectly doesn't mean that the taken in hand gets a free pass to behave and do whatever she wants. Because no one's ever going to be 100% perfect all of the time. And we have to show up for each other and for ourselves in a way that honors the other person and honors our relationship. And so don't get that twisted that the taken in hand is only held accountable when the head of household is leading well. That is not the case at all. And in fact, when you're not leading well and it does result in a breakdown in my behavior, the only way to rectify that, the only way to get back on track is to follow through with discipline, because I know that I deserve it. I know that I've gone against the rules and against the standards of our relationship. So I need that accountability in order to not only forgive myself, but feel restored in our relationship so that I can then go forward in a positive way. And you need that too in order to feel like you've reestablished your authority. Yeah,
and it's so important what you just said about all of that. And really, head of households, that's what you have to remember. Even if you fail, you need to still hold her accountable, but then, have that, apologize that you didn't live up to that, but then, strive to do better. But it's really that two wrongs don't make a right. And that's what we're getting at, is that just because you fail doesn't mean you shouldn't hold her accountable, because those two wrongs don't make a right. And so that's exactly right. If you want to continue to move things forward, if you, to a certain extent, I kind of look at it as, if I fail in that own area with myself by holding her accountable, I've learned from what I just messed up on, because I did in fact follow through regardless of what happened with me. And so just look at that as, even though you may have messed up, with yourself, still just keep on keeping on, no matter how many mistakes that you have made, because just like you said, we make a million mistakes during the day, but that doesn't mean when we make the first one we just throw in the towel on the whole day, but we do our best to salvage it.
And just like you said, two wrongs don't make a right. So not having consistent or predictable leadership and then not holding accountability for how you're taking in hand response to that, that is another mistake. So you don't want to continue to make mistakes, because mistakes don't fix mistakes. The only way to really fix it is to get back on track, to establish your authority through discipline, and to basically reestablish the roles and the expectations. The only way to do that is through the consequences that have been legitimately earned. And don't shy away from that part. Don't shy away from using discipline, using spanking to fix where you are kind of going wrong in your relationship. Whether it is a cut and dry rule break, or if it's just kind of a tone or just kind of tension between you two, don't shy away from using discipline to fix those things, because it really does, and it just really just resets everything and sets you up to move forward with success.
Yes, and so remember, the key piece here is, if you're having trouble in consistency in anything that you're doing, just look at everything with a fine-tooth comb and try to say, where is it that we need to tweak here? Because the key to consistency is trying to streamline everything as possible. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to feel like effort at times, but it's going to feel like it is a little bit more fluid, and it's going to take less effort. So just that's what we would encourage you to do, is really look at everything: your systems, your pillars, your rules, your schedules, individually and collectively, all of those kind of things, and figure out, okay, where is it that we need to be more fluid, and we need to make some changes and make some tweaks in order to be more consistent.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to join us for our post show, links on membership options are down below. Post show is for not only YouTube members, but over on Patreon as well. So definitely check it out if you're interested, if you want to hear how we expand on this conversation. Otherwise, we will talk to you next time.
See you later.